Welcome again to WS&Co. My name is Nellie Lester. We are part of the WS&Co advisory, and today we've got a special guest with us, Kim Vermaak. And Kim is going to be sharing a bit with us about her own experiences in change management. Kim has gone through various transitions in her life and has been able to do quite a few, different things in different seasons of her life. And so we've invited her here today to have a brief conversation with us, Kim, about how you've managed change in the past, what lessons you've learned from those, and something that we can take away to share with our audience about managing change and being able to come through intentionally in doing so. So tell us a bit about yourself, and then we can follow through on how you've managed change.
Thank you, Nellie, for having me in the show. So I'm a book coach and a publisher, and I'm also a speaker, public speaker. And I must say that change was not something that I managed very well in the past. I tended to flap and panic and then make life miserable for everyone around me. And it was only when I realized that the big thing that I needed to manage was actually over here that it began to shift for me. Not easily, but it did shift. And so probably an event that most people can remember in the recent history was when we had lockdown.
Yes.
So lockdown, I always call it, was the great equalizer. I mean, you had people who were at the poverty line who were struggling to get food, and then you had people who were incredibly affluent, but maybe they didn't have enough savings and that kind of thing. They were also struggling to get food. So it was such an enormous shift for me. But that particular change, I felt a little bit more equipped to deal with than previous ones because I was already on a journey of self-discovery.
Yes.
And so the scenario is that I had come from the corporate gifting industry. I'd been involved in it for over 20 years. I knew that industry like the back of my hand. But most of my clients were event coordinators.
Wow.
So there were no events.
There were no events, as would happen during lockdown. Yes.
And my husband was a trainer and facilitator, and all of his contracts got shut down because they couldn't do in-person training. A lot of people hadn't learned this whole online thing. And so we found ourselves without income. I have 2 young children that were living at home. One of my daughters, my eldest daughter, had been with some friends doing a little bit of studying with them, and then all of a sudden we couldn't be together.
Right.
So it was a massive change, but I had written a book and published it, and I did the launch one day before the president announced lockdown in this country.
Amazing.
So that was quite a shift for me, because while I didn't have any other income coming in, the royalties from that book came through 10 days after the function. And then I continued to start getting money from Amazon every single month, regardless of whether the fact that it was locked down.
Working or not, yeah.
So I realize now that this was something that I could do. It was hard, but I could do it. So I wrote all the way through lockdown. And when I did get money coming in, I reinvested it into my future, which I shared with you was incredibly hard. Yes. I would look at things and okay, I need to take care of family. We don't know when this lockdown thing is going to finish, but I also want to invest in my future, in software that's going to help me in terms of my business and in terms of my new business. And there were days where I felt like I wanted to hyperventilate with it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I had learned, particularly when I had postnatal depression, is the power of walking out a decision. So it meant that I would walk backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards until I felt a sense of calmness.
Right.
And that's when I would go and I would spend the money on the software. And that first bit of software has made me, I think, probably more than 200 times what I invested in it. But at the time, it was like, are you insane? I had to
spend this amount of money. Yes. Yeah.
So that was the big thing. And then also knowing how to talk to yourself, because your inner voice is almost like a little lapdog. So when there's an intruder outside, your lapdog goes yep, 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 yep. And most of us will scream out the window, shut up. And then the dog is saying, but hang on, I think there's danger. Can you please just pay attention to me? And it will keep on complaining until you pay attention. So the good idea is to go to the dog and say, it's okay. I understand that you are there to protect me. I'm taking cautions, maybe bring the dog inside, but don't live in complete fear. So most of us are still saying, shut up, shut up, shut up. And they're not actually finding what the root cause is.
Yes.
The other thing that I did is that I celebrated wins all the time. So every morning I write the 10 wins that I had for the previous day.
Right.
Now, people going through depression and that kind of thing, they're going to struggle with this because they're going to say, it's nothing good. Nothing
coming
good.
out of this,
Sometimes I heard one woman say to me, the only thing that you say is, I have good coffee in the house. That's one
Choose one thing that, you can be, at least happy about or thankful about. Yes.
And sometimes you can borrow from other people. So if your friend just found out she got a promotion, you can say, I'm so happy that my very good friend got the promotion and that I have been the friend that's always been there for her.
Yes, yeah.
So managing those kinds of things are absolutely critical for change management.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I mean, when you started, you spoke about the change that came about you with COVID coming into place. And sometimes there are changes that we know about, other changes just come. And it's quite interesting hearing you talk about a change that you didn't plan for and what you went about setting in place to be able to do it. I particularly like the fact that you were looking at limited resources and saying, now this change has come. Should I spend the little money that I have, to reinvest into, starting a business or in improving my business, so to say. And all those are very intriguing ways of being able to be aware about and be able to deal with change. You've also mentioned, about even these milestones, that you say are very important for change. If our audience out there beginning to look at ways of addressing their changes, what are the 2 specific things, that you might say worked for you and you would encourage others to do the same?
I think that for me, I had to differentiate between what was my own fearful voice, what was things that other people were saying about me or the situation that I was facing, and what is the reality. Because we actually sometimes lie to ourselves.
Yes, yeah.
What I was mentioning earlier on to you is that when I started doing publishing for other authors, people would come to me and say, can you help me to write a book?
Right.
And I would always say no. I'm not your person. I don't have an English major. There's a lot of things that I don't know. You need to find someone else. And then as it started going through, someone was saying to me the one day, okay, so when you come to coaching, you have to realize there's always going to be some people who know much more than you, and there's always going to be people who know a lot less than you. You pitch yourself to the people who know less than you. And it still didn't kind of resonate in my spirit, but then I spoke to my husband and then he said to me, well, how many books have you written? So I said, these are the amount of books I've written. And I think at that conversation, I was already on book number 5 or so. And then he said, don't you think you know something about writing a book? I'm like, yes. So my thing is that look at the situation honestly. Sometimes we have to remove ourselves. And I say to people, if this was a friend of yours and you were evaluating and giving them advice, what would you then say? So not what you would say to yourself,
say
but
to
what
a
would
friend.
you say? Yes. And that's kind of balances things out. Also choose who are the people that you're going to trust with your change, with your dream, because a lot of people have got fear and the thing is that people who love you the most can be the most damaging to you, because they are worried about you. They don't want you to make a fool out of yourself. So rather go to someone who's navigated this change successfully. Doesn't mean that they had to be perfect, but they've gone through it. I know that you were on Alan Ray's show quite recently, and I love that. One of the things that he said, which still gets me in the heart, so I hope I'm not going to be tearful over here, but he said that there was a day when the cash flow was so bad that he couldn't even afford to get his child out of hospital.
Sure.
And he had to take personal loans to make that happen. And in the story that he tells, he's sitting on the floor with this child in his arms, and he thinks, what am I doing to my family? Why am I doing this? Now, when we look at him now and we see how many thousands of people have gone through his programs, you're like, what? Yeah. So sometimes we just look at that success, but we don't get the meat of the struggles that they went through.
Underlie that.
In his book, he even says sometimes he would go to meetings and he only had a few coins to pay for the petrol to go home. And he would have the meeting at a coffee shop hoping the other person would pay for coffee, because then you'd have money for petrol.
For petrol to get home, yes, yeah.
You know, and we don't always look at that. We look at the success,
the big outcome of it, not what has gone into place to deal with that change. Kim, thank you so much for sharing this. I mean, I could talk to you for days, just about stories about change and how we're often so fearful, and yet when we take those steps for change, that's when our greatness comes into fore. What we fear becomes our source of inspiration, our source of success even. So thank you so much for giving us some insights on, how to deal with change, and the ability to do that knowing or intentionally that your success lies on the other side, and one can take heart that we need not be fearful of change, and walk through with some courage into getting there. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Now that we've heard from Kim, I just wanted to also give us some pointers for what will be coming through. In part 2, we'll be talking about goal setting and how to go about navigating our ways once we've made a decision to make a change. So look forward to that, and we'll be speaking to you again soon.